Commodore says, hope Macarthur can recover. Yeah, it's only 1-0 at half time, It's only 1-0 at half time. Plenty of time to go here. Absolutely plenty of time to go. AJ says, Blaze, what do you think about second division? A good question. So I think that, I think we said this last night on the previous stream, but a second division would be great. Eventually, we all would love it, but eventually is the key term here. Eventually is the key word because it's not sustainable right now. We're saying that basically, a lot of the lower teams would love it, like your own NPL teams and your teams down there that could create that second division and that third division and get something going like they have in Europe and South America with the promotion and relegation. But the reason why it's not sustainable is because even though it's great for those teams, it's not financially sustainable for the teams already in the A-League. So say, for example, the Mariners, always struggling in the A-League. Maybe not this year, but still might struggle this year, but always seeming to struggle in the last 5, 10 years or so, 5, 6, 7 years. They always are just not great. Imagine they then consistently being down there, still getting money from the A-League and still getting financial revenue from TV sales, then going down to the second division. They can't financially keep up with having that drop-off from their TV sales, from their crowd attendances, because I can guarantee you there's going to be 3 people. Tomo, Jack, and Bill from the pub will go down for a bit of a laugh, but no one else is really going to give a shit because they're second division now. It's not like England where it's so deep-rooted. It's not like England where there's going to still be full crowds there for like Newcastle at St. James Park or Sunderland. They still don't get the crowd necessarily every game, and they're a very historic team with a great supporter base. So, I just don't see it being sustainable for those A-League teams losing all that money and going down to the second division. You could honestly see a complete drop-off. And obviously those teams from below come up and they get money, but it just doesn't seem sustainable right now. So maybe if we eventually get to a point, maybe 10 years, 15, even potentially 20 years down the track, you've got to think that long-term, then we might see something like that happen. It might be a lot more, there might be a lot more availability in regards to that. But for the time being, it just doesn't make sense financially for those teams already in the A-League because one team minimum will get relegated. 1 or 2 teams will get relegated. I'd say one team would get relegated, and I just don't think they could handle the drop financially. Kurt Farrell says, congrats on 8K, thanks mate. Davenda Merkin says, football is fixing. Every single stream we have someone complaining about being fixed, like holy shit. Like it's not fixed, man. It's not fixed, man. Do you think more New Zealand class should be in the A-League? Or clubs, maybe, you might be saying. Do I think more New Zealand teams? No, not yet. Well, people don't really get around Wellington and New Zealand as it is. New Zealand is a rugby nation, so even rugby league is a little bit down over there. They still support the Warriors because it's still rugby, I guess, but they're all Blacks there. They're all Super Rugby Aotearoa. So with New Zealand, I would eventually love a rivalry there with a North and a South Island team, but Wellington don't have the support to justify a second team in New Zealand just now. So obviously that's still kind of going along the lines of the promotion relegation too, because what if, say, Western Sydney Wanderers get knocked down from the A-League, and then after that, the team that comes up is like a relatively, like a Western Sydney kind of team. I can't think of one off the top of my head in the NPL. Like the support-wise, it doesn't make any sense either. Like it's just not like it is in England. In England, it's a lot easier. In England, it's been deep-rooted for ever since the start. It's not been something that they just thought about including because of somewhere else. They had it since the start. So they didn't know any different. The clubs all made financial commitments based on the fact that they knew what they were doing that year. They had the potential to lose it. They had the potential to gain it. But it's just not so dramatic compared. Desert Wi-Fi says, football is the most played sport by kids. Football is taking over, so hopefully soon in the future, an Auckland team will join. Well, I would have to absolutely disagree with that for the time being anyway. I think that obviously, yeah, it's 100% football is the most played sport by kids, but it's also been the most played sport by kids in Australia for a very long time, and yet we're still in the situation. Until Australia starts getting and returning to being a quality team again, as a national team, no one's really going to take it long-term seriously. I think that really, everyone keeps talking about rugby league regressing. It is absolutely not. It's actually progressing. Rugby league has been making growth in the last couple of years compared to regression. AFL, there's absolutely no way you could say that's regressing. That's also been making growth. Rugby has slowly started to return again in the last 2 or so years. It's slowly starting to pick up again in Australia. The A-League obviously would have been getting up to a very close to at least definitely third, significantly picking up. Before in 2015, they were starting to make some ground road, but obviously the FFA made sure to stop that. But look, no, New Zealand, they're not anywhere, even in the next 20 years, should they be getting another football team. Not in the next 20 years. The next place should be Canberra, obviously looking towards Tasmania. You would love to see a North Queensland team or a Gold Coast has to eventually bring back a team. It just should happen. The only reason they're not here is because Clive Palmer is a twat. Without Clive Palmer, a Gold Coast more than likely would still have a team, and there's just too big of a population base to not have a team there. I'm from the Gold Coast. I'm very well aware the Gold Coast is a very 50-50 place that people obviously come to that already have a team from somewhere else. But in the same sense, it's just too big. When a team's doing well in the Gold Coast, they sell out crowds. Go back and look at 2010 with the Titans. When the Suns start doing well, they'll start picking up crowds. When the Titans start doing well, which we are, they will start picking up crowds. The virus obviously prevents a little bit nowadays due to the 25%, 50% shit that is happening at stadiums. But the Gold Coast is definitely a place longer term, like maybe 10 years on the track where they could think about adding in a team there again. But Tasmania and Canberra are probably the two predominant, specifically Canberra. Desert Wi-Fi says, do you think the Phoenix should leave the league and join the New Zealand Premiership then? No, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying at all. Where did that come from? Oscar Berg says Auckland. Yeah, Auckland's the next. If New Zealand gets another team, it'd be Auckland. If New Zealand gets another team, it'd be Auckland. But Wellington are struggling to survive as it is. Wellington could have easily been kicked out of the competition 4 years ago. 4 or 5 years ago, they nearly had their contract torn up, or they weren't going to get re-signed. So they weren't going to be renewed as a contract. So Wellington Phoenix have had their troubles, but because people pushed so hard for that to stay, they obviously were able to stay. Cameron Lee says, what is AFL and a Northern Territory team? Northern Territory, no way. No, that's just not happening. And no sport will go there. AFL maybe one day, but not enough population there, and I don't know about the crowd there. It just doesn't make sense. Hopefully, maybe eventually, that could be genuinely. We're talking 30, 40 years before we even see people talking about Northern Territory. That won't be happening, especially not in football. If anything, it'll be AFL, I guess. But they do bring rugby league games to Darwin from here time to time. I don't think they do AFL, so maybe they might be testing out the market there. But I don't think that Darwin gets too many big games. And the thing is, it's all well and good taking a game there once or twice because that's a one-off, a two-off kind of system where people will be like, oh yeah, shit, yeah, there's a football on this weekend. Let's go and have a watch the rugby, and then they don't have to go next week. But when you've got a team that's there who play home games there and is actually a Darwin-based team, you need to have the ability to know that they're going to get fans every single week. You need to know that it's not just a one-off anymore. They need to have the money where they're going to come back this week and then next week and then week off and then come back the week after. You need memberships. You need continuous support. So that is the problem with Darwin. That is the problem with Northern Territory. It's too small of a population up there. And the fact that I just don't know how sustainable it is. Sport Reaction says, hey, they have a footy team called the Northern Territory Thunder. Well, that's great. That's not a major sporting competition. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying at all.